are talking Extracurricular. This one is directed by Ray Xue and is a heady mix of The Strangers, The Purge and Heathers. So this is a teen thriller horror that focuses on this four group of friends. Now, on all outward appearances, they absolutely seem perfectly fine. In fact, they seem very well adjusted, particularly kind of overachieving at school. They seem to be fairly kind of popular. You know, they have kind of somewhat different kind of home lives. There's two brothers and kind of these two kind of girls. However, these kind of four kids have a bit of a dark secret. And what is that secret? Well, they're actually murderers, serial killers, even slashers to a certain degree. And what they actually do is they plan out meticulously elaborate kind of setups and murder various people just for fun. And they do this in a variety of masks to kind of scare them and get the thrill of the hunt. So it ultimately focuses on this kind of group of four individuals who you can't really call protagonists, let's be honest with you. These guys are our main characters, but they're certainly not kind of the protagonists or heroes, so to speak, of the story. They are actually pursued by the local town sheriff, played by Goss, who may well have a connection to these killers, although he may not know it. So what will happen? You have to watch the movie to find out. Inevitably, I can pretty much guarantee you there will be some blood and gore in this film. So what works, first of all? I have to say, this movie felt original and fresh. I don't recall, although it does have elements of maybe the films that I've mentioned, there's certainly not a lot of films like this, I feel, that's really kind of has the point of view from our killers and kind of fleshes out the kind of the psychology of them to a certain degree. And I think with the, although this isn't kind of like a school shooting movie, you kind of get that feeling. It's kind of related to this phenomenon that really we have in America, where these kind of kids just seem to lose it for whatever reason and decide they kind of want to take out, you know, bloody violence on their peers. So like I said, this isn't a school shooting film, but I really kind of feel that there is a sort of a connection to at least maybe the psychology that may be involved with these type of sort of cases that you get in America. I actually thought the acting was pretty good from our four kids. I thought they did a pretty decent job here of giving us some different type of sort of characters that could believably be friends. Like, we have two brothers, and one of them is, I suppose, more of the leader, and he is very stoic but intelligent, and he generally is the one that has the kind of the planning. The brother seems more impetuous and wants to kind of fly by the hip a little bit more. And the two girls, one of them seems somewhat assuming but may well be the worst of the bunch. And we have this other girl who comes from a very well-adjusted family. They seem perfectly happy. And you get the feeling that maybe she's kind of teetering with some type of regret. Although she is by no means an unwilling party, she is happy to get her hands dirty. So we have some very kind of interesting and fairly well-drawn sort of characters. Although, put a pin in that, I do have one issue with this. That are very interesting to watch. And then we have the Goss character, who, you know, is becoming a little bit of a genre staple these days, I must say, appearing in kind of pretty much a lot of B-movie action, kind of sci-fi and horror movies. Little known fact to you Americans out there, he used to be in a British boy band called Bros some years ago, which I don't know if we're ever broke through in America. Anyway, the movie does have some pretty brutal violence in there as well, and the way that it's filmed, I gotta say, feels dangerous and shocking. And you do get the sense that the violence displayed on display here feels more like real violence against kind of real people, which I thought was a good. So cinematically very disturbing, and kind of you felt for the victims. Certainly in the kind of like the last act of this movie, the first kind of kill that we see on screen is filmed more like a kind of a typical kind of slasher, and it will evoke images of the Purge, the Strangers, and the movie does have this kind of like this Heathers kind of feel to it as well, as I've mentioned. maybe what doesn't work with this movie. So one of the things that did annoy me a little bit about this film is that we don't really know why they are doing this. There's no real story outside of they just get a kick out of it. Now, I got a feeling this is by design, and we're not meant to know the psychology of these of why they're doing it. It's just meant to be these guys are damaged, and that's just it. But I would have liked to have known how they have got to this point. How have, you know, really two brothers and then two sort of completely separate girls have got together and discussed committing murders in the first place. I mean, how have these three sets of strangers ultimately got together and discussed murdering people without kind of seemingly anyone kind of going, oh, hang on a second, what are we doing here? So I thought that was a little bit of a question mark. I mean, who knows? I mean, we have cults in the world, but for a piece of entertainment, I did find myself scratching my head a little bit and thinking, how have we got to this place? And I would have liked to have seen maybe some flashbacks or maybe a little bit at the beginning of the movie showing how this actually kind of happened, because it didn't really feel like, you know, it just kind of skipped it because it didn't want to deal with it at the end of the day. One problem I feel maybe this movie will have is that because the film focuses on our killers, and really they're pretty brutal and pretty malicious, is that there's no real likeable characters in the movie that we are rooting for. There is an attempt to have a little bit of a sympathy for one of the female members of this group, but it's very slight and there's not a lot done with it. So as such, our four main characters seem heinous and unlikable, and you're not exactly rooting for them. You are more watching from a kind of a third party of the events unfolding, you know, abhorrent in the violence and things. So it's not a film where you could particularly root for the protagonists, if that makes sense. I mean, I suppose technically speaking they are protagonists, but they're certainly not the good guys. I gotta say as well, I thought the police seemed a little clueless here. The police led by Goss seems to be very one step behind the whole time, and they are fairly easily manipulated. There's a scene where a distraction is caused, and it just didn't ring true to me. It just seemed like the police were written to be somewhat of an idiot, and they don't really have a lot to do. They're always kind of on the back foot, and I would have maybe liked to see them have a little bit more coming close to kind of what's going on. And I also think that when they do link these kind of murders, you would have seen more manpower. It just seems to be two policemen, Luke Goss and his sort of partner, I suppose. There never really seems to be much of a concerted effort from forces when they say in the movie that they've only ever had one murder prior to this in the last kind of like 6 years, and this particularly they've had like, you know, 4 or 5 or whatever it is. It just seems that they're vastly undermanned. But overall, I gotta say, although I wouldn't say this is necessarily entertaining as a subject matter, it's very dark. It's certainly a well-made and a disturbing film. It will make you feel uncomfortable. This movie isn't meant to be a rollicking ride. It's meant to kind of make you feel uncomfortable and make you feel like what's going on in the psychology of these kind of kids today and what can cause this. And I feel the movie doesn't really give you any answers to this, but it certainly makes you think about the question a little bit more. I will give this movie a 7 out of 10. I do think it's a well-made film, and I think it achieves in what it set out to do, although I feel that maybe it could have had a little bit more set out in the first place, a little bit more to do. 7 out of 10 though, well made, certainly an uncomfortable movie to watch, and if you want something a little bit different, if you're a horror fan, then I would suggest checking it out, because it's kind of like, it has elements of things that you're going to be familiar with, but ultimately it's something quite new. 7 out of 10, have you seen it? What did you think of it? Leave me a comment and I'll look forward to seeing you next time. Bye for now.